Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiffany Dell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. In Saudi Arabia, Warner has the photos out. Max is keeping stum, yet the rules of overtaking are under the microscope yet again. Meanwhile, Lando is handing the championship over to Oscar, a bit early for that maybe, and Lewis is a very troubled man. But at least Formula 2 and Formula 1 Academy provided some real racing, but it was Forza Ferrari in Italy as they win the WEC race, World Endurance Championship, while the Japanese Super Formula headed to Motegi for a touch of dandelion dominance. And in the spotlight again, this is all done as rounds again. The 2026 F1 engines are back in the limelight, so we'll come on to that. But let's go on to the race because the race was bloody boring, but there was lots to talk about, and to go through. Where do you want to start?
I don't know.
Happy Easter, by the way.
So we are happy Easter to you. We either sort of start about Lando trying to throw away his title or Max trying to win the title by devious methods, as always.
Max,
we'll kill off poor old Lando. We'll just dump poor old Lando first when he's, I don't know, I mean, the difficult car to drive. He just tried to go a hundredth of a second quicker and just lost it. The shame was, to me, the crazy thing was that's the first run of quali of Q3. You know, was surely a banker lap, but I don't know. But it would appear that those sort of speeds, you just try to push 1% faster. Unless you're Max Verstappen, you know, you lose control. So it's such a shame for the championship in a way, you know, because it's obviously put Lando on the back foot. We made a good recovery. We'll come to later in the race, but yes, poor old Lando, his little brain now. We need some more analysts. Lando needs to go to more analysts.
Well, we said it last week. You've been saying it for a long long time that maybe his head isn't there because he really does beat himself up about it.
Yeah,
but it doesn't help. Did you see that quote that was in Drive to Survive is doing the rounds now? Zach Brown said, "Senna, Schumacher, Hamilton. We're now entering the Lando Norris era." That was at the end of last year. That has not aged very well.
The shame it was that he was actually on top this weekend. You know, it's usually so close between those two. But you know, last weekend Oscar was like a tenth faster throughout all the sessions, pretty much, and this weekend it was Lando. It was about a tenth faster. But it's a crazy circuit for lap times because there's obviously, you know, the skill level is obviously small. The driver input, as we put it, you know, Suzuka, we said, you know, that's somewhere a driver can make a difference. You know, so you get great qualifying laps. You know, the fact the top three were covered by 0.113 seconds, three different cars, two different engines. It's incredible, really, that there can be point over a whole lap of a racetrack. And I was looking towards the back, just how the track's in a way so easy. Because, I mean, look, it was poor old, I made a quick note because I've forgotten it now. Yeah, Jack Doohan didn't get out of Q1, but he was only 0.35 of a second down on his teammate. His teammate was 7 places ahead of him with 0.35 of a second. And in fact, from Gasly, who was in 10th place, to Hadjar, the last person to get through Q1, was covered by 0.15. You know, 6 cars. So it's ludicrous.
It doesn't surprise me with the teammates because even in rubbish, well, it's not rubbish, I shouldn't say that. Even in Caterham racing or club racing, you're so close to everybody. Everybody's so close. That's a single series race. Yeah, milliseconds or hundreds of seconds. But when you got all these different cars, you got all these different engineers, these different strategies, different setups, and they're so close. That's what makes it incredible.
It does. But, you know, then, of course, you know, we came to once again, Red Bull came from, I don't know where they were in Q1 or FP3. FP3, they were about 10th and 11th. I don't know, you know, car won't steer, car won't brake. And as per Suzuka, they weren't on the pace until the last end of it. They just seem to have the ability, the engineers can look back at previous ways, previous lap times, and they seem to be suddenly able, I think they probably arrive each weekend and try something new, which is why they look bad early on, because they're trying something new. And then they say, okay, that hasn't worked. So, you know, towards qualifying, they'll say, okay, let's go back to the bits that made the Red Bull work the last 2 or 3 years. And they just find the key to the door, plus Max's brilliance at finding that extra tenth. You know, I mean, I mean, I watched him going through those faster corners, and he just looks faster. I don't know why, because it can't be. It can only be half a mile an hour faster to get that close to lap time. You know what I mean? It just somehow Max
when they
superimpose the rules.
Yeah, when you superimpose the ghost of the Red Bull against the McLaren, it's neither, to me, that's neither here nor there. And sometimes I just think, wow, Red Bull, the whole team are just so much better than everybody else, or they seem like they are. But then under the spotlight, surely the second driver has got to be a major failure of Red Bull for so many years.
Well, it just shows how good Max is and how, Yuki's still getting there. I mean, he's doing better.
But it's not just Yuki. Tiff. It was Yuki, it was Lawson, it was
Perez.
Perez. So that has been a failure for many, many years for what is arguably the best, most dynamic team. Because I agree with you, they do try different things, they do push it. Whereas McLaren go out from the beginning, from the day they test, from the day they arrive. It's the same sort of setup for them, but. Me included, Horner. Most people with Horner just like, oh, Christian, and we'll come on to that in a minute with his photos. But it just doesn't endear himself to the fans at all. That everywhere you look, or people you speak to, the guys I played squash or paddle tennis with, everybody's like, oh, what is Horner doing? He's so annoying, and he certainly didn't endear himself to many people over the weekend.
Yet again. But I mean, I think we start off with the incident that's coming up with the bloody track. When that track debuted, you and me, I said, why on earth have they designed a track with the same first corner as Monza? Monza. Everybody hates the beginning of Monza. This having a 2-turn corner to open a race does not work. And you've got to make a law or something. You've got to say you can't have a track like that. You can't have a race.
Track?
Yes, Tilke. But I mean, there's Monza, I made a list: China, Imola, in Italy, since the Senna crash, obviously had a chicane put in. Miami's got the same thing. Spain's got the same problem. Canada's got the same problem. Mexico's got the same problem. They've all got right, left, or left, right. It's the first corner. And they all create wing breaking, carbon fibre puncturing. And you just got to tell the tracks, you've got to change the track with a different opening corner somehow. I know in Monza they've got parkland, they've got trees you can't cut down. I mean, there's obviously lots of problems. But when Tilke has a clean sheet and he creates that as the first corner, I mean, it's ludicrous. I mean, you could have put the pits complex just after the final corner, way back, so at least there was a bit more length before they get to those tight corners. But you've got to blame the tracks a lot. If we can't change the cars, and they're not going to change the cars because that's all set in stone for the next 5-6 years, or only 3 years with the engines. We'll talk about that later. So we got this stupid track, and then we got Max, and we've got a regulation overtaking regulations. This is another worst thing. You write a rule in. Max is brilliant. He reads the rule, and he finds a little rule that says the person ahead at the first apex. So he thinks, well, right, that's brilliant. So I'll just, if I'm behind, I just come off the brakes. I won't make the corner, but I'll be ahead at the first apex, and then the corner is mine in the rule book.
Yeah.
And so he drives like that. He drives to the infinite tenth of the rule book.
Then you get Horner coming out with a photo. And those who didn't see it, he went to his little press conference afterwards with a printout of Max ahead by 7 or 8 inches or whatever it may have been. But that's exactly what he's saying. So the whole team is saying to Max, "Oh yes, Max, you were in front.
Ahead. Yeah, you were in front."
Then this is why they don't do themselves any favors. Just say, "Look, we were wrong," and Max. But they're never going to do that ever. But I saw of course it was a penalty.
I criticised people on the Twitter about how someone sent a static photo of Max being ahead by a millimetre, saying that proves. But the worst thing is to show a single photograph. Everyone could do that to win an argument. I remember with the Cops Corner thing with Hamilton and Verstappen, the number of photos that he's ahead. But unless you see the approach there and the fact that he's only ahead by millimetres, he's just taking his foot off the brakes because he knows he's not going to have to go round the corner because all he's doing is committing to get to. But there's one shot when they're both about to go off the track and the room behind Piastri is over a car length. Now, a whole grid has arrived. But that difference of whoever would have, it was Leclerc would have been third, or under Russell probably.
Yeah.
You know, it shows how fast the both of them have gone into turn one, because the third place car is like over a car length behind because they want to actually make the corner. You know,
Well, Oscar said, I only just made the corner, so I knew he wasn't ever going to make the corner with braking that late. And I used to manipulate it if from Cops. So what pit is that at Silverstone you start from, the old or the new? If you get Cops as your first corner.
Not anymore. No, not when that incident happened with Hamilton.
No. What is that? So at Cops,
they call it Abbey. It was flat out turn one at Silverstone.
Yeah. So what if you start from there? I used to always just go flat out, even in the little caterum, because if I ran wide, I don't care.
Because go off on the tarmac,
exactly, and that's what Max is doing. But surely you can't get away with it in Formula One.
Well, but they've written the flipping rules. The worst thing is the stewards have bottled out by saying we're not going to tell you to give a place away. The team must decide. And if later on we decide the team was wrong, we'll give you a time penalty. We all hate time penalties. IndyCar, they got a man at the top, one man, respected, you can sack him and get a new man in next week if you want. You can put Martin Brundle in the place. That just says instantly, give it back. Sorry, I'm not going to analyse every millimetre. I get people tweeting saying, so you can't overtake around the outside? You have to leave room for someone on the outside. And I've quoted what happened with Yuki and Gasly, because that's a classic. If you want to go around the outside of someone, you have to accept there's a fair chance that the car you're overtaking might drift out and touch you or push you off the road.
Absolutely, because you can't help it. You can't help it if you're on the racing line and you brake later.
You're on the inside. You're holding off someone. So it's not reasonable to expect someone to just be able to overtake around the outside. Is a very rare, brave, skillful thing to do. And if you get away with it, but you've got to be wheel to wheel, sort of halfway from the apex to the exit of the corner to sort of, and then if you touch wheels and that make the guy on the inside back off because you're there. But you can't make him back off from the apex. You can't just give track away in racing by a rule book. And that's what's happening. And Max is doing it to the rule book. But I think on this occasion, he wasn't enough ahead. And everybody knew he'd just taken, they got the telemetry to prove, he just probably went in about 10 miles an hour faster than he could have made the corner. But it's the fact that he then penalised Piastri, because Piastri was now in dirty air. And so that wore Piastri's tires. So in a way, not only Max got a 5-second penalty, but Piastri got a whole stint of tyre wear and being held up. Although it doesn't look like he's been held up, because he's a second and a half behind, so he's not. Bringing back 2-second rule for DRS should be brought in. We've been saying that now.
No, you've been saying that, but I have agreed.
So, so Piastri was penalised as much as Max was in a way. And then Horner is saying, end of the race, we were just 2.5 seconds behind. Without that penalty, we would have won. No,
you wouldn't. You wouldn't.
Was it Sterling Moss? The great Sterling Moss, I think, was one that said the great drivers, the skill of a great driver is he wins the race by the smallest margin possible.
Yeah,
because 2.5 seconds to Piastri, you're cruising. And you stick at 2.5 seconds.
Same as Lando. All the Lando fans saying, that Lando would have won because he was much faster. He had much better pace than Oscar. Well, because Oscar didn't have to push that hard. He didn't. Oscar wasn't starting in 10th.
No. Oscar didn't want to risk ruining his tyres to have a 10-second lead at the end of the race. What's the point of a 10-second if you risk then rubbishing your tyres? So Oscar was just chilling out 2.5 seconds. He didn't have to go any faster. So it's ridiculous to say we would have won without the penalty. This is Christian Horner. You raced yourself, Christian. You've been with motorsport forever.
This is why people are struggling to like Red Bull, because and when they're the offenders, it's all okay. But when the tables turn, they always cry foul, and it's just
pathetic.
Monotonous. It is.
It's sad.
Okay, let's move on.
So
let's move on from that.
Go back down the grid. Jack Doohan, as I said, have a good weekend. Again, Gasly had a bad weekend with Yuki, and I think both those drivers said afterwards, well, I couldn't avoid it and he couldn't avoid it. He tried to go around the outside and had John slid wide first lap. That was a real racing. You don't hear them say that much more anymore. A racing incident has to be someone's fault now, doesn't it? Has to be someone's fault.
Yeah, it's a bit like in the police. There's no such thing as RTAs, road traffic accidents. They're all
Yeah.
RTCs now,
Oh, are
road
they?
traffic collisions. Yeah, so there's
It's
no
not an
such thing as an
accident.
accident. Yeah,
Someone must be at fault.
yeah.
Haas had a bit of an off weekend. Behrman got through the Q2, but only qualified, 15th? They weren't as quick. They didn't like the high-speed corners. Lawson had a good weekend. He actually out-qualified Hadjar for the grid. But Hadjar got ahead of him in the early laps, had a different strategy. Hadjar started on the mediums and Lawson was on the softs, or medium and hard, I mean. So, yeah, Lawson had a good weekend, matching Hadjar until he got a 10-second penalty. People are upset on Twitter now because Lawson overtook Bortoletto, didn't he? And got the 10-second penalty for overtaking in the same place and gaining an advantage and not giving it back. And the rule book, they actually said, the steward said they only gave Max 5 seconds because it was an opening corner incident where they showed
It
more
would have been
lenience.
it would have been
Yeah.
10 seconds normally.
So
But
it should have been 10.
But you think if Red Bull think that's okay just to get a 5-second penalty, then all McLaren has to do, if ever they're behind Max or Mercedes or whoever, it's just miss the first corner and go in front. Don't give the place back. Get 10, because they'll get 10 seconds in front, no problem at all, and they've won the race. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing to do, really.
Well, that's what they say all the time with these giving a place backs with track limits and stuff, overtaking. They have these stupid 5-second penalties. They should have a man on the radio, give it back.
Agree.
Pal. That's it.
Agree.
And there'll be times when it's wrong, like football referees making mistakes. There will be errors made, but over the year or 2 years, everything will balance out all right.
Agree. Yeah, with you there.
Williams had a good weekend, 8th and 9th, with Sainz now really showing some speed. And Albon was on the quotes this morning saying, you know, Carlos is showing me a few places. That's a great challenge there. We've got Alexander Albon.
They're very equal, aren't they?
Yeah.
Carlos, one of my favourite drivers. Apparently, he's like the nicest man ever. But he really was milking it. Yeah, well, I was having to hold back, and I was giving him DRS. And and he was really, even on his Twitter or Instagram.
Well, he's a proud man. He's a proud Spanish man that's been sacked by Ferrari. It was weird. Poor old Hadjar was a bit upset, I think, because he caught up with the Williams. Again, having a great race. Hadjar's quite one of the star turns of the year.
He is. Yeah, he's really impressed me, actually. But Hadjar was complimentary in the end. He said, wily and experienced.
Yeah. So, Behrman, I don't know where Behrman finished. They're all out of the points. Alonso, he got taken out Bortoletto. That woke me up from my slumber on my chair, my armchair. I was beginning to doze off a bit.
Oh, that was close.
God. I must admit, I didn't see. I don't know when Lawson's overtake going off the track was on the telly, but I think I did nod off. I didn't see that. But and of course, the other story of the weekend with George with his tyres. I don't know how to steady. George didn't have his normal podium this time when his tyres wore out more.
He wasn't far off. Yeah.
And then there's the Hamilton story. I mean, poor old Lewis. I mean, he's getting more Oscar. He's getting more depressed with his situation, and I can't drive with it. I don't like it, and a horrible race. And whereas Leclerc's second stint, and Leclerc was saying afterwards, they just can't get the 1 lap time out of them flipping Ferraris. But once they get on those hard tyres, they seem to, be the best car for it in race trim. But Lewis just off the pace, full stop.
So Martin Brundle, who I love, I think everybody loves, he said something, and what it's like in commentary, you do say something without realizing it. He said about Max leaving the track on purpose was really clever, but then when Lewis used the DRS on Norris, it was a little bit naughty. So he's calling Lewis naughty for doing that, which they've all done, always at Jeddah. With it, remember the DRS, the overtaking, holding him up for 3 laps.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. I forgot about that. Well, that was just Lando being stupid. Why did Lando overtake?
Why didn't he just wait? Surely they know that.
He wasted 3 laps. Oh, anyway, sorry, Martin was saying what?
But Martin said Lewis was naughty doing that. That's very naughty from Lewis.
Why?
Well, why? He's fighting for position.
Yeah.
It was for 6th place or 5th place, whatever it was. He's fighting for position.
He did brake quite hard. He rather brake tested him a bit. Because, I mean, he'd had that first race there when him and Max were having who could brake earliest. Yeah. But again, I criticise Lando for his overtaking manoeuvres in Bahrain. We felt he could have done a better job because he kept on going for it into turn 1 in Bahrain, whereas the most popular place was to back off into turn 1 and overtake on the straight down to turn 4. And again, Lando seemed to be not going the most obvious strategy, which is to stay behind into that third and final corner, get the
It's just so
DRS.
obvious.
I know, but he did it twice. He tried to do it. But I think the second time, he was thinking of staying behind Lewis, and Lewis braked so much. That was the naughty bit. The Lewis over braked to try and make sure he went by. So that was a bit naughty. So yes, it was a dull race. So it hadn't been for Max's first corner, we wouldn't have been talking about much at all, apart from McLaren and Lando obviously crashing, the two things to talk about. But so engines are up in the news. So the race.
Hang on, before we go on, we got to congratulate Oscar for the win.
Oh yes, we forgot on that.
He's had
a brilliant drive.
How many wins has he had compared to Lando now? Do you know?
Same, I read somewhere. He's now got the same wins as Lando,
but 82 fewer Grand Prix.
Yeah, but that's
I know. It's the car.
I can just see Crofty saying that.
But it's true. 82
fewer. But Lando had shit cars for his first 5 seasons. And Oscar's come straight into, I can't remember how many years. And Oscar's come straight into a winning car. So it's stupid stats like that. Your win rate out of Grom is so annoying.
Anyway, five apiece, and the confidence with Oscar for sure. But again, Oscar, clearly he's a lazy driver, but he doesn't seem to have much of a personality, does he? Doesn't really wear his heart on his sleeve. I like a bit of. I love Max, I gotta say.
Yeah, but people wear hearts on their sleeves, crack under pressure like Lando and Lewis and things,
Well, talking of that, Max is refusing to comment on things now, and he's keeping his responses very short because he says you're not allowed to say anything. Sturm. No. You're not allowed to say anything derogatory about the FIA. What a ridiculous
situation we're in.
That is. Yeah, it is.
He has to go. Really the FIA has to change. I was talking about Oscar. One thing, but not only complimenting his win, the round the outside of Lewis move after his pit stop. You remember that? One of the really quick
absolutely.
That was
completely took him out of took him from by surprise there.
Went through a cloud of dust that could have contained bits of carbon fibre and nails and stuff. You're real ballsy. He's ballsy, all right, that young Oscar.
Cool and ballsy.
So the last thing about the Formula 1 is this engine. So the week before last week's race, where were we? Bahrain. They had a meeting because everyone got excited about V10s. Oh, let's have normally aspirated V10s, because these new engine regulations are rubbish. They had the big meeting, and because Audi and Honda probably said, no, it has to be unanimous decisions anyway. We've got to stick to the rules we got. So everyone agreed a week ago, okay, we're going to stick to the rules we've got. And all of a sudden, last weekend, the Formula One, sort of what they are, one of the groups, Formula One committee, decided they're going to look into the engine power output for next year again because of these rumours that some would run out of power, with electric power going down the long straights. Horner was quickly denying. It wasn't me that said that. I haven't stirred it up. Whereas Toto's raging away, saying a week ago, we've agreed. We might not all like it. We can't have V10s. We've agreed we're going to stick to the rules as written that all our engine tuning factories have been working on for like 12 months. But all of a sudden now, without being prompted by anyone, apparently, Christian, they're having another meeting on Thursday. They're talking about, because the only thing they could play with is the electrical deployment, the battery deployment. Because it has to be 50% the petrol engine and 50% the hybrid engine is the power gross. But apparently, if you use your full electric power pack around longer straights at Monza and other long straight tracks, halfway down the straight, you'll run out of the battery power. And then we'll have to lift and coast. It'll be like a Formula E race. It could be chaotic. But we've been saying this anyway ever since the stupid rules were written. So they're now saying they might drop the power on the race day. Instead of 350 kilowatt thingies, that is the full allowance, then they'll only be allowed, say, for example, 200 kilowatt thingies. So they'll be slow in a straight line, but none of them will run out of the power before the end of the long straights. So it's chaos. The whole thing is going to be. I'm dreading it.
I'm bored now of the engine situation.
But poor old Christian with his Fords. See, Christian's making his Ford engines at Red Bull power plants, isn't he? They'll power the Red Bulls and the Raging Bulls or the Racing Bulls. Honda have gone to Aston Martin. I don't know how good their engine will be. Audi have got a brand new engine from nowhere. Ferrari have got Ferrari, Haas, and Cadillac have got Ferrari engines, and I think they're quite happy with the rules. And Mercedes, of course, have got 4 teams: Mercedes, Williams, Alpine, and McLaren. But fast forward next season, I don't think we're going to be enjoying Grand Prix racing. Well, apart from the team that has got the best engines.
We were so excited about this season. We thought there was 4 teams that were going to be neck and neck, and we couldn't have been further from it. You got Max.
Yeah,
no,
they're neck and neck, the 3 teams. I mean, Mercedes had an off
3
weekend.
teams, and you've got, yeah, exactly. You've got like 2020 or whatever. You got where Mercedes were so far ahead, and then everybody else was there or thereabouts. It's the same as that. But it's typical. You always seem to have one team that does. It's just that little bit better.
That's close this year. I'm still very excited about this year. Very excited.
It's not close at all. If you're talking about teams, talk about manufacturers, it's not close. It's a done deal already, isn't it? McLaren.
I don't care about the points. I just about each race.
Teams.
Each race. Yes. A team's championship's irrelevant. I don't care about the team's championship. There's going to be some great racing to come.
Yes.
Where are we next anyway? Miami, is it next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, Miami. Because that's not usually a good race, is it?
No, it's not.
Oh gosh, when's the first good race? Imola's not good. Imola's got too many corners. Then there's Monaco. We've got Miami, can't overtake. Imola, you can't overtake. Monaco, you can't overtake. Spain, yeah, sometimes. But no, Spain's not usually good to overtake. Canada,
Jeff, you're missing the point.
We're waiting
missing the
June
point
the 15th.
with Miami. They got the best DJs and the best celebrities.
I forgot. They got yachts. They got yachts
exactly.
in an artificial harbour.
They're missing the point. The whole point of Formula One nowadays.
The party.
Let's get to Formula 2. Formula 2.
Yeah, Formula 2. Some good racing. There was quite a good, happy, sad story in the Formula 2. I quite enjoyed it with the reverse grid, the dreaded reverse grid race. Qualifying 9th was this Dutch kid. It's been 5 years. He's a bit of a what's that soap formula? That's a second year soap formula. It's a long timer. It's his 5th year in Formula 2. He's never quite had the money to get them to the best teams. He won Monaco Formula 3 race, which shows a lot of driving talent. But Richard Verschoor qualified 9th, got pole position for the reverse grid race, thanks to someone getting a grid penalty. And he held off to win the reverse grid race, but then got a 5-second penalty or 10-second penalty for squeezing someone out towards the wall in an overtaking manoeuvre. It was Pepe Martin. After the race, Pepe Martin said, well, I thought I was a bit close, but it was all right. It was racing. But no, some wide-eyed steward has decided to penalise him. And the trouble with Richard Verschoor, he's lost 2 races at least I can remember by the regulations. One, he didn't have enough fuel in the tank at the end of the race and he won it to have the sample taken. And another, he got caught with a dodgy throttle computer program for the start line, which probably didn't make much difference. So he's lost. This is at least his 3rd race he's lost to a sort of pretty edgy penalty. But the good news, though, that meant that British driver Arvin Lindblad inherited the sprint race win, which was quite good because I know reverse grids, I complain because they don't overtake. He came from 6th on the grid to get up to 2nd on the road and then got granted the win when Verschoor was kicked out for a dodgy move somewhere in about 5th lap of the race. But it meant that Arvin Lindblad became the youngest ever Formula 2 race winner. If you want a factoid, Crofty, there you go.
Very good.
He was 17 years and 243 days old, which made him, by 21 days, the youngest ever Formula 2 driver. And the pub quiz is, who was the youngest driver that he took the record off of?
Don't know. Who was it?
No, Teo Pourchaire.
Oh, okay.
Who deserves to be in a Grand Prix car, but has been shafted by Alpine and other people over the years.
And of course, Lindblad was the Autosport winner, wasn't he?
Did he win it in the end? No, he didn't win it. He was one of the finalists.
Oh, yeah, of course he was. No, it wasn't Lindblad. It
was run by the kid
Freddie
doing Formula E.
Yes.
But anyway, the main race, the feature race, was Verschoor's revenge. Because he started 9th on the grid, which is very qualified, but he was the first highest car on the grid to go for the hard tyre strategy, because all the front runners go for the softer tyre, the medium, well, not medium, it was soft, I don't know what it was, different name. So the front 8 all sprinted off and raced away until their tyres wore out. It was being dominated by poleman Jack Crawford, the American, and Victor Martins, the French guy. But meanwhile, Verschoor was making the most of his harder tyres, pitted about 6 or 7 laps from the end to put the soft ones on. And he had to overtake both Victor Martins and Jack Crawford to take a win. Took the win on the last lap. So a nice bit of story that someone deserves better in life, maybe, and a good win after a disappointing. Lindblad didn't get anywhere in the main race, finished 7th, 1 pace behind the best Brit, Luke Browning, who was 6th. So a bit of racing, good story, like that.
Good.
Then we had the Formula 1 Academy ladies, who I have to say this season is becoming quite a good, exciting race. We've got these 4 out front: Maya Wurg, the Austrian, Dorian Pin, the French girl, and Chloe Chambers from America, plus Alicia Palmowski, our British girl. And she's really the rookie of the pack compared with the 3 Dorian Pins and the season last year. And I love the idea that Alicia's come from she came second in the GB4 championship last year. So she's gone from podium at Snetterton to podiums at both Shanghai and Jeddah. So,
Well, I was looking at her career. She had a couple of years in Ginetta Juniors, and then GB4. You're right, she came second with 3 wins. I don't know how many reverse grids, but still, she had two pole positions as well. So clearly, she's no slouch. Yeah. And now she's doing incredibly well in Formula 1 Academy. Sort of came from nowhere, really. She wasn't even on the radar last year.
So those 4 really are looking. That's some great racing. Maya won the race, but both her and Chloe Chambers, it's now their 5th year in single-seater racing. So I remember one of the things that the girls that got upset about were the boys had always had more racing, had more testing, and we only come in at last minute to have a go. 5 years they've both been at it now. Maya's a Ferrari protege, so she won the final race. She's actually of Dutch, Belgian, and Spanish nationality. It's a bit tricky.
How is that possible?
I don't know. That's what Wiki says. I know that's what Wiki says. But she beat Chloe Chambers.
I'm going to get slated for darling.
Yeah, you're going to be darling now. Chloe was 6th in the last year's championship and suddenly come to the front this year. It's her 5th year of single-seater racing. So she came 2nd. Dorian Pin was 3rd in the main race. And Alicia was 4th. The only other one that's attacking the top 5 is another great story. In 5th was this 16-year-old Danish girl, Alba Herit Larsen, who has done a few single-seater races. I think she went out to that Indian series over the winter. She's doing British Formula 4 this year. But she was on the back
series
of the pack.
called? MVP, isn't it? No, what is it called?
Something like that. So she's in there. So she's probably the surprise of the year.
MRP.
Ella Lloyd, British girl Ella Lloyd, won the reverse grid race. She qualified 8th, started 2nd, and won the reverse grid race. But she held off the top 4. Maya caught her up from 6th on the grid. And so Ella did a good job holding them off to take the reverse grid race. And it was entertaining. Good to see the girls scrapping a bit more than the processions that we've had in the past couple of years, or 3 years. From Chadwick, was it 3? It was Chadwick. She won 3, didn't she? W Series.
2, wasn't it? Oh, yeah, W Series.
Yeah. 3.
You were allowed to stay on back in
then
those
we had
days.
Pulling. Then we had Pulling. I think you have to leave after 2, wasn't there? Pulling won last year. No, we had a Spanish girl won the year before, Marta Garcia, didn't she?
Yeah.
Then Pulling. And now we've got... good battle. So a better battle than before.
Should they be in faster cars? Because calling the F1 Academy and being in... What is it? Is it like a... Is it like a GB4 car? Is it what sort of car is it?
It's a Formula 4 GB, Formula 4, I think.
So should they be in something a little bit faster, or is that?
I don't know. We'll find out this weekend because Abby Pulling this first round of the GB3, which has got a great entry this year at Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. So we'll see Abby Pulling taking on some talented young boys, and that's a real challenge for her. So that was Saudi stuff. Over in Italy, we had the Imola 6 hours, the World Endurance Championship, which is, it's racing for the true enthusiast, shall we say. It's mind-boggling what's going on. Balance of power is, you can have 3 more horsepower, but you've got to lose 2 kilograms. They are fine-tuning the balance of power to such an extent. Toyota have been, I think, badly hit. They're really struggling. They dominated the championship for 2 or 3 years. So I think they've been told you're going to go through hard times now. Ferrari seem to be benefiting from it more than others.
Do you think there might be sandbagging before
Le Mans coming? Yeah, you never know with the Le Mans sandbag. But it's an 18 hypercars. And they all finished the race this time. All finished. So the reliability is incredible. The 2 Valkyries towards about 14 cars ended up on the lead lap after 6 hours. The Astons, they were 4 laps down, both of them, but they've they're waiting for a balance of power. They've come out with a brand new car. So quite rightly, they're not given massive balance of power advantage early on until they see what they can really do. And maybe they're definitely sandbagging for Le Mans. But 18 GT3s, I mean, it's great racing on the track. But even when you're watching the television, the problem is that unless you've got really good comms or a really good Radio Le Mans in your ear, is you don't know who's got to pit again. So even with 45 minutes to go, you're watching a car leading. But unless you've really got info, you don't know, oh gosh, but he's got to have a splash and dash. So the real picture of who's where after 6 hours, you don't really find out until 15 minutes or so before the end of the race. It's still entertaining stuff. And of course, they're weaving through the GT3 cars, which makes endurance racing. And but we're talking about what's 9 teams now. We're talking about McLaren and Ford in 2 years' time, say they're joining. Lamborghini have got a car racing in America, but can't afford 2 entries. You have to have 2 cars to enter WEC. Honda with the Acura race in America. They haven't yet entered WEC. They could be in, so you got Honda in. Then we've got this Genesis labelled Hyundai, which Jamie Chadwick, of course, is driving the LMP2 car sponsored by Genesis, with the thought that she may well be in an LMP, a hybrid car next year. So it could be 14 teams doing 14 manufacturers.
Amazing.
I mean,
yeah.
But as
I can only
say
assume that it's beneficial for the manufacturers in terms of development for their road cars, because otherwise, why would they all choose WEC?
It's not benefiting the development. It's just benefiting their association with hybrids. I don't think it makes much difference.
Okay, but you got the likes of Lamborghini who did so badly in WEC, and so I don't know. Is that a benefit? Anyway, there was a bit argy-bargy Toyota and Ferrari in the hypercars. There was proper argy-bargy, hard racing.
Well, Imola, you can't overtake it. Imola, that's probably not a trend. But we had the pole city Ferrari won the race with Pierre Guidi, Giovinazzi, and British boy James Collado. BMW was second, Alpine was third, with some bloke called Mick Schumacher, one of the 3 driving lineups. So 3 different manufacturers, top 3. The 4th place was another Ferrari, Robert Kubica. So some famous names. You go watch a Le Mans race, you'll see names that you've known for the past. Fabulous GT3 battle. In the last few laps, the BMW driven by the South African Kelvin van der Linde was chasing down the Porsche of Richard Lietz, but couldn't get by. Really good fight to the finish. And of course, the BMW was one that's shared by Valentino Rossi, who they would have won by a mile, decided to go for a ridiculous overtake manoeuvre at the second Lesbo, punted some poor old Ferrari off the road, got a drive-through penalty, without which the BMW would have been way ahead. And in 3rd place was a Lexus, which is, of course, Toyota. Because you can only enter the GT3 at WEC if you've got a car in hypercars. So, Mercedes, so you can't have a Mercedes GT3 because they're not in it. So that was all good. Entertaining, as I say, fabulous, just a spectacle. It's sort of race where you went to him and you walk around the whole track, or I would, see different corners. But you wouldn't need a radio.
You can't do that these days, though, can you? They stop you walking all the way around, and they've got different. I don't know. I think they got different fences and barriers, and you can only go so far. And unless you're a VIP like you, if you're a minion like me, then you can't.
Then over in Japan, we had the Super Formulas. Great single-seater series.
Where was it? How do you pronounce
it? Montegi. I say Montegi.
Why didn't you put an N in it when you put Motegi? Motegi.
I can't find what I put. I don't know. I can't challenge you on that.
Motegi. You put Motegi.
Oh yeah, well that might be right. Maybe it's
no wonder I got it wrong.
I think it is Motegi. Anyway, the Dandelions. I had to put the Dandelion Domination. I like that as one of my little headlines. You can't beat a bit of alliteration. Makino beat Ota in race 1, and Ota beat Makino in race 2. But it still depresses me when you get a domination by a team, because they're all the same cars. And so you just know. So are those 2 the best drivers, or is it because Dandelion have got the little tweak that makes their Super Formula cars? Just always spoils it to me when you're a tuning house, whether it's whoever. Who's the famous ones in Formula 2 and Formula 3? The Italians. Prema. You see, always Prema 1, 2, and 3. So not much overtaking, good racing. We've got Zach O'Sullivan out there in Japan trying to keep his single-seater career going. Have been dropped by the Formula 2, running out of money, but he only had a 12th and an 11th. So Dandelion.
Did you race at Motegi?
No. It is Motegi. No, so there isn't an M. Motegi.
Okay.
I only
Good.
raced at about 3 circuits in Japan. There weren't many other circuits in those days because they built, what's that another Grand Prix track where they raced the Grand Prix? I can't remember. I never went there. So that was it around the world. I did Fuji, Suzuka. I did a couple of others in touring cars. Yeah.
Well, you say that was it, but I've got something else. There was a bit of madness at the Madhouse for NASCAR Regional. And if you haven't seen this, it's worth a Google because Zach Staley and Justin Alverson showed their displeasure following the street stop feature. And it was just something else. So they obviously had an argy-bargy, and then they were coming in, slowing down, and they just started ramming each other. And then one guy's got him sideways, wheels are still going, smoke's still going. Then they get out, and honestly, it was like Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights because they're fighting, they're swinging, and people are jumping on it, and Marshall's trying to hold him back.
That's NASCAR, baby. That's NASCAR. That probably wasn't a NASCAR race because it wouldn't have been a NASCAR affiliate. Actually, talking of NASCAR, of course, there wasn't a NASCAR race last weekend, but there was an Xfinity race at Rockingham, I think. Where Catherine Legg was having another go. She's got about a 6-race program sponsored by a sponsor, and it was unfortunate. She actually qualified quite well. I don't know, within the bottom 5 or 6 in her own car. But then owners that are established to do so many races have rights. So if you're a regular owner and you don't get in the qualified on time, you go ahead of anybody that isn't a regular owner's points, which Catherine was. So Catherine got kicked out, wouldn't have started the race. So the owners bought her a ride, but bought a driver out of a car that had qualified ahead of her, or maybe behind her, but got ahead of her due to the owner's points, right? So anyway, she's at the back of the pack, minding her own business, doing a good job, staying with the pack. And I think it was only about 10 laps before the first pit stop to the end of the first sector. And the leaders caught her up. And she tried to stay out of them. She moved up a lane, and a couple overtook her on the left. And then the sort of third one in line of the leading pack of 3rd, 4th, 5th places just rammed into the back of her. Sort of was following too close. The car in front obviously went down, and then he sees her too late, and she'd backed off to try and help the leaders go by. But she's now going 10 miles an hour slower, perhaps, than the other two. And so off she went into the wall, race over. And actually, as the commentary came back, you could hear someone in the back of the box saying, she just bought the ride, she's got sponsors, implying that Catherine shouldn't really have been there in the first place, which was a bit, someone ought to dig that recording out and give someone a kick up the arse. She's learning the ropes. I mean, Catherine's one of the best British female drivers we've ever had. Well, so she won Formula Atlantis. She went to America, she won what is now the Indy Lights, which Chadwick had one win in. She won the championship, Catherine. Then she went to IndyCar, had reasonable, midfield finishes, had a huge crash at Road America when the rear wing fell off, going into a full throttle, the kink. Had a massive shunt. Then she went GT3 racing. She's won lots of races. She did
Formula E. She had a couple of starts in Formula E.
She did, yeah. I've forgotten she came over to Formula E. So she's really come. She's done Indy several times. She had a bad Indy last time when she made mistakes. But,
Why doesn't she, now they won't want this, Susie Wolff won't want this, but why doesn't she go into F1 Academy? She's 44 years of age. So she's got plenty of experience. She's got lots of single-seater experience. Why doesn't she go in the F1 Academy? I mean, that surely that would be good for them, wouldn't it? To show that
she goes
they
and
wouldn't want
that.
Beats all the would she go and beat all the youngsters? I don't know.
It's quite, when I did I've done my historic Formula Ford, we get some young kids in that. It's quite hard to go from driving a powerful car with grip to this momentum of keeping your little single seater going flat out on the throttle and lifting off as little as possible. So it's quite a big thing to go all the way back and unlearn what you've learned for 50 years. But I think she'd probably win.
Catherine, I think may give Susie a call, and if you win the $500,000, then think of Tiff and I. And you.
Sadly,
what's coming up next week?
It's all in Spain, mate. You're going to go to Spain or Britain next week. If you go to Spain, you can watch the World Rally Championship and the MotoGPs in Spain.
Where's WRC?
Just in the middle of Spain somewhere. Don't get technical with me.
It's
dusty and pretty. Oh no, maybe it's tarmacy. That's why I drove Colin McRae's Subaru. It was the Spanish.
Amazing.
So I think it's a bit dusty, but mainly tarmacy.
And where did you go when he was driving you? Where were you then? Was that Scotland?
Somewhere in Spain. No, it was in Spain. I went out.
Oh, same place. Okay.
Yeah.
So you drove him and he drove you, or just he drove you?
Yeah, he drove me first. Then, well, I didn't drive him. They put Nicky Grist in. Colin wasn't that stupid. Hey, you have a co-driver here. That's the wrong accent. Anyway, I can't do accents.
Was that one of the most memorable drives you ever had?
Yeah, it was. It was just epic. They're lovely. And the manual gear shift and some of those modern day H pattern gearbox. Remember, I drove the touring car BMW, you know, the British touring car in the 80s. And it's just clack, clack, clack. It's just so joyful to use.
Yeah.
Purr, 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 purr. The fact you were changing the gear and the rewards. I mean, they've still got pump actions, of course, in rallying. You've got to pull the lever to change the gear, and it's not an electronic shift. So it's so good because you can see the hand changing gear. You sort of know what the driver's driving. Whereas you can't tell when they're turning and they go, bum, bum, bum. You can't even see if they've changed the gear or not on the paddles behind the steering wheel. We can't bring it all back. It's no good looking back. Then America, we got in Talladega, baby, where you'll sit there for 3 hours waiting for a 200 mile an hour, 10, 20 car crash. But the good thing about the super speedways of Daytona and Talladega, you can get some backmarker winning. It's almost anyone can win the race. It's not always the regular people up front. But back in Britain, you've got a horrible choice if you're a proper race enthusiast because they're not far apart. You either go to Donington to watch the British Touring Car Championship opening rounds, which should be epic to watch, or you go to Silverstone to watch the British GT cars and the GB3 with Abby Pulling and a lot of young talented drivers having a go. So it's two really good weekends out in British Spectator. You could do, I suppose you get one on Saturday and one on the Sunday, couldn't you? Look at the programmes if you wanted to. So touring cars are go, GB3 is go, and plenty to watch.
And we're gone. See you next week. Thanks for joining.
That's a horrible goodbye. I can't say we're gone. Bye.
Bye.